Okay, so I've got 201, so we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining today. So my name is Brian Linshield. I am a professor at Kansas State University. I also chair the General Education System-Wide Transfer Course OER Recommendation Committee. And so we're pleased to have you join us today. The focus is on elementary statistics. And so how I'm going to start out finding a little bit of overview about this process, and then I'll turn it over to our two statistics experts to introduce themselves and talk about what they reviewed and what their recommendations are for this class. So the reason for this process that we've undertaken is that there's some of the things that are most commonly referenced as barriers to being able to adopt and use OER are the time involved in trying to identify the resource, as well as the difficulty in trying to go through the numerous resources that are available. So the purpose for this process and the recommendations is try to save time for faculty instructors that are interested in using OER in these courses. The intent is not in any way for these to be a mandate that these has to be the resources used for these classes. We're just trying to reduce a barrier and things to hopefully increase use by those who are interested in doing so. So as far as the process, there were 5 courses that were funded through this pilot. So college algebra, composition 1, elementary statistics, introduction to psychology, and public speaking were the 5 courses that we focused on. And then the funding that we had to be able to support this process was from the Midwest Higher Education Compact. And so we're very indebted, to them for allowing us to do this. And so that's the overview of the process. And so I would like to turn it over to Elaine and Bill now so that they can introduce themselves and move into kind of their process they reviewed for statistics.
Sure. I will go ahead and share my screen once you're done.
Awesome.
Okay. And let me go to, there we go. It's up here, is it not? There we go. Okay. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name's Elaine Hembree. I am an assistant professor at Johnson County Community College. I have taught statistics for, let me think, the last 10 years. Before I was at Johnson County Community College, I actually only taught statistics at the University of Michigan. But here at Johnson County, of course, I teach a couple other things besides statistics, but definitely statistics is my big focus and my love. I love statistics a lot, so I try and teach it as much as possible. I'll let Bill introduce himself next.
Sure, thank you. Bill Weber, assistant professor at Fort Hays State University. I as well have been teaching stats for a long time, probably close to 20 years. Have been through many paid resources over that time period, but I kind of got interested in being part of this project because I know that our university is encouraging OER in the gen ed courses, and this was a really good opportunity for me to become familiar with the best OERs that are out there, so that it can help make our decision a little bit easier. But as Brian said at the beginning, to me, this is a great little project here to save time for everybody. Hopefully, these resources that we found are what you were looking for and can save you a lot of time. So
cool. Yeah, hope so. All right, I'll start by just very quickly going through our evaluation criteria, and then we'll talk. We actually found 4 really awesome resources for you. So when we went to evaluate them, we of course had to look at, the scope and the usability, like practically, can we actually use this in our classes? Does it meet the criteria for the course outcomes and things like that? Is it accurate? Looking for, is there any big typos? Do they have correct information? Is it relevant, right? Cultural relevance, accessibility, and those types of things. And then, of course, are there any things to go with it, activities, teacher resources, and those kinds of things? So we did try and take a holistic approach to reviewing. When we reviewed many, right, Bill, we reviewed many of these sources to try and hone down the best 4. We actually found 4 that were really great. So that way each instructor can sort of find their own flavor, if you will, in their style. So I'll talk about our first one. It's actually a book I've used, so that was kind of fun. I actually used this book when I was at the University of Michigan when I did taught this intro class called Stats 250, and I switched to this book in 2020, and I actually really like this book. So it's called Introductory Statistics with Randomization and Simulation. I will drop the link in the chat so that you can easily find it. It's when you go to open the page, it will tell you that there's a newer edition, and the newer edition is called Introduction to Modern Statistics. And I did read through that book a little bit. I found that the newer book, the Intro to Modern Statistics book, they're by the same author and it has pretty much all the same resources, but I thought that there was way more topics than maybe we would use in an introductory statistics class, and the topics that they had were a little more in depth, and I just felt the book was a little more dense. So even though when you open this page it says, hey, we have a newer edition, I actually recommend the old edition, which is called Introductory to Statistics with Randomization and Simulation. And these authors are actually in my last recommendation. This one uses simulation-based inference. So if that is how you teach your statistics class, then you're really going to like this book because it absolutely does both simulations and randomizations for their inference approach. If you teach it the other way, then hold tight. We'll have some stuff for you in a bit. Here are the list of some resources that you'll find on this page, and it is through Open Intro, so there's a lot of resources. So they have problem sets with solutions. I've actually used some of the problem sets with solutions. They are pretty good. They have a lot of data sets, which I really like. So you're able to use data sets in class for problems, all of that kind of stuff. So they have a nice resource of data sets. They do have some sample exams. I didn't look through them super much. Hopefully I'll make my own exams when I use this book again, if I get to use it again. But it is nice to sort of see what other people are thinking in terms of their exams. It also has slides if you need slides for your resources. If you wanted to have labs, so I know some stats classes have a lab component, then there are lab materials available for the chapters, and they use several different ways to do it. So just to name a few, they use R, both base and tidyverse. So if that's you, they have some really great lab materials. R Guru, which I know is up and coming, Python, there's even more. There's SAS. I mean, we can just go on. There's like a whole list of things. They use My Open Math for their homework. So you could use My Open Math and utilize homework there. And then I really liked that they had LaTeX source files as well. So they had a really robust list of teacher resources. For the students, they have videos for nearly every section of the textbook. So that's really nice. So the students could watch the videos and read it. And again, that My Open Math is really nice. That way there's a homework system. They're able to do it. Students do like those homework systems. They do want that instant feedback at 1 a.m. So that's a really good component to this book. It does use Shiny apps. There's a whole bunch of distribution calculators using Shiny apps. So they host their own. That's really cool. You can sort of get away from the graphing calculator unless you want to, which they actually have a graphing calculator guide. So if you wanted to show them, how to use the graphing calculator to come up with, the critical values or the critical multipliers, there is a graphing calculator guide with videos, but you could also use the Shiny apps distribution calculators. They have probability tables, and then they have a whole bunch of interactive examples using those Shiny apps. They do some linear regression interactive examples, some central limit theorem things. So it's really quite robust, this book and this open resource. I really like this book and highly, highly recommend not only this book, but these authors in particular. All right, I'll turn it over to Bill to talk about two others we found.
All right. So as Elaine said, that first book there was the one that we thought was the best of all. I mean, each of these other ones that I'm going to talk about had some strengths in them as well, but just holistically, they also had more weaknesses and so forth in them. And so I know at Fort Hays, we've sort of begun the process of looking for an OER for as soon as possible. And we're going to actually try to build off of that first one there. We thought that was the best one out of all of them here. Some of the other titles that also had some interesting features in them that we thought were pretty good. They kind of like made the final list almost, but yet they weren't maybe the best one. The Intro to Stats, an Excel-based approach by Watts was also a pretty decent resource here. Certainly, if your focus at your university is going to be to teach with Excel, this is going to be a nice addition because throughout the textbook, they specifically talk about a concept and then, oh, here's how we follow it up and do this on Excel. And so that's really nice that it's just right there in time. One of the things that I know at Fort Hays, we've used Excel for a lot of years now. One of the things I didn't quite like as much about it, even though it does work with Excel, is I wish they would have given a little more description on why the functions in Excel sort of work the way that they do, as opposed to just almost like presenting the functions and then say, oh, okay, this is how you do it and this is it. I wish there would have been a little more on the why part of it. But yet it still is not bad. I mean, it's one of those things, if I'm teaching it in class live, I can talk about the why in class. And then if students have this resource, they can go back and reference it. Oh yeah, he gave me the why. Now I just need to remember the details. This would be perfect for that situation. The thing I didn't like about it was maybe more of an online asynchronous type course where the students maybe don't get all of the why part of it. And then they're just trying to use Excel to crunch out numbers for them. And then they don't necessarily know if these numbers are reasonable or not. So that's my biggest concern is in like an asynchronous approach, maybe it might not be quite as effective. But they also did have throughout the reading sort of an interactive reading. They would go through and talk about a different concept and then all of a sudden jump in the middle and, hey, now you try this particular problem. And if this problem makes sense, you probably understand what we're talking about and you should be able to move on to the next section. So it's a little more of an interactive read than some of the other books. But so those were some of the strengths that I saw with this Excel book here, Intro to Stats. Okay. And yeah, go ahead. You can go to the next one. Yeah, thank you. All right. The other one that I'll mention here really quick, overall, this book was not as good as the other books themselves. But one thing that I really did like from this particular title here was all of the interactive apps that they had to play with. I didn't even realize this, but I'd been using some of the apps from this particular book from Rice. I'd been using them in my stat course for years, and I just didn't even realize they were part of a bigger library of apps that were tied to this particular online textbook here. Okay. So yeah, David Lane from Rice University has this. Like I said, there's lots of neat little things to play with. I don't know if I was as comfortable adopting the book itself, but supplementing it with some of the interactive apps may be a possibility. And so that's why this one kind of made the list as well, was based upon the apps. And I think
Cool.
the next page is back to Elaine here. So
Yes. Yeah. So circling back to the first book, which was the simulation-based inference. This book is by the same set of authors, but it would be the more traditional approach to statistics. And I've linked all of those in the chat for y'all so that you can browse them. So that's why this one made number 4. It's called Open Intro Statistics. And it's pretty much the same book, but just not the simulation-based inference version. So it takes the traditional statistics approach rather than that. But it has all of the same resources that I mentioned. It's got the labs available in a whole lot of different formats. It's got some LaTeX source files. It's got all the Shiny apps and the videos and the calculator guide. It's got sample projects. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on of this. So this is also a really good book to consider as well. The one thing that this book has maybe that might be different than the other 3 is that this one actually can be used with WebAssign. So if you didn't know, WebAssign actually does have some OER books that you can use, and they have some of the questions in WebAssign. Now, WebAssign isn't 100% free. However, it is a smaller nominal charge because you're not adopting the big name textbook. So it is a smaller fee. So that could be something that if, for instance, you really like WebAssign and you wanted to find something to work with, this would be a good option for you because this one is listed on the WebAssign page and they have a whole bunch of the questions loaded in there already. And again, it's got the labs, the solutions. Basically, it's got the whole same list as the first group, and it's got a lot of stuff in there. So definitely check that out as well. For this book and the first book, What it makes you do, it looks like it might charge you, but when you go to like the page to buy it, I don't know if you're not familiar with Open Intro, when you go to the page to buy it, you can slide it over to $0 and then just download it for free. So that's sort of the trick that you tell students. But students can donate a nominal amount as well to buy the book. So just wanted to touch a little bit about that. So yeah, so that is our 4 resources, each hopefully giving you a little taste of how you could adopt it for your own class and your own style and the things that you like most about how you run your class.
So thank you, Elaine and Bill. So now we have time for questions and discussion. So I can start, since I know lots of times people aren't quite ready. So for the trying to get the name correct of for the first resource you suggested, Elaine, have your students mostly download like a PDF and that's how they use it, or how are they using the resource with your experience with it?
Yeah, so for that one, it is only a PDF for the textbook. So you do download the textbook itself. Whereas the 4th one actually added in the option where you can view it in the browser. So that's sort of the only downfall, is that they do have to download it. And then for all the other resources, it's that you download it and sort of set it up for your students kind of thing. But the videos are all like ready to go, which is kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. Are the interactive features embedded in that resource then, or are they something you have to help students assign with or use the LMS to try to communicate, like which ones might be good to use or which ones you want them to use?
That's exactly what I would do with this resource, is try and communicate which ones I would want them to do. For instance, when you open, like, say, some of the lab links, if students aren't familiar with, how to do it, it could be overwhelming to them. So I would definitely recommend a sort of a scaffolded approach where maybe you direct link some of the videos or direct link some of the things that you want them to do. It is all there, but there's a lot of stuff for sure. When you scroll this page, it just goes on and on and on with all the things. So I would definitely recommend that instructors scaffold it in some way and just link out what they want.
Because I know while you're talking about it, I was looking at the how do you get the exams account? It's sort of so I was curious about it. If they're putting exams up there, if people want to use them, how are they like gatekeeping? Those. And so I saw there's a sign-in page, and I think it asks for like your URL so they can try that verify. You know what I mean? That you are an instructor.
Mm-hmm.
You're a grad student. It looks like they want you to give somebody faculty that can vouch for you, to get the account and things. So
that makes sense.
Other questions or comments from the group who's been able to join us today? Okay, so not seeing other questions. I appreciate everyone joining us today, and thank Bill and Elaine for their work. It's very interesting to see, the way you went about this and the resource, that you kind of identified, and some of the ancillary materials and supportive materials that people might be able to use, and so help people as they are considering if they are interested in doing this. And so appreciate everyone's time, and hopefully this leads to more people considering, this as a resource to use if they are teaching a class like that matches up with it.